Tried uploading this like 5 times using the Cam Studio software, and the save aborted each and every time. It was crazy. So we'll just try it with the webcam and see what happens. Um, Let me make a little confession to y'all. I love phony phone calls. I love listening to them, and I love making them back in the day. One time when I was in high school, I I left a phony message where I pretended to be a Mexican guy on some guy's answering machine, and he star 69 me, and my mother found out about it. I was grounded for like 2 weeks. I never got grounded as a kid, but that time I did. And then my sister met her college boyfriend when he prank called her dorm room. That is how he met her. And then when we got together, look out. And we literally cemented our friendship. We became best friends over nights of beer and crank calls. Um, and when they broke up, I think I was just she dumped him. My heart was crushed. I was like, is there anything I could do to talk into keeping him? Yeah. So, yeah, I love prank calls. And he gave me this copy of this like underground crank call tape in 2000, and it's rough. I mean, it's hilarious. But this guy's pretending to be. Well, no, he's not pretending to be. He's using a pseudonym of Mark Knopfler. Mark Knopfler was the bassist for Dire Straits, I believe. Correct me if he's some other instrument player for Dire Straits, whatever. And that's who he's saying he is. And I, oh man, they were ridiculous. You can find them on YouTube. Not for the faint of heart. And when we were listening to these tapes, we were thinking to ourselves, we were saying, I wonder who this dude is. Wonder where he was calling from. Wonder when he was making these calls. And a couple weeks ago, I find that there is this website called beforethejerkyboys.com where they a bunch of idiots, and don't get me, I'm not coming down on them. I'm the biggest idiot of them all because I'm going to the website and eating it up with a spoon. But a bunch of ding dongs went through all the calls with like a fine tooth comb, and by the little hints that the guy dropped, pieced it together and connected all the dots and realized this guy is making these calls in Dover, Delaware, and he's making them during the summer of 1986. And I'm on this site looking at this, and I'm cracking up, and I'm like, is what these people are doing, is it terribly different than what textual critics do to try to piece together where the Gospel of Mark was written and the implications of that, okay, based on this and based on that, and I thought, no, these people are just amateur textual critics, except they're phony phone call critics instead. So with that in mind, I made a discovery pretty recently that about the Gospel of John, and of course, doesn't say on the original copy of it, an early copy, this is written by Yochanan bar Zebedee, the disciple of Jesus Christ. Doesn't say who wrote it. The early church pretty well says that John wrote it, but maybe they got it wrong, whatever. So why should we believe that the Gospel of John was written by St. John the Apostle? Well, I discovered this. St. John, Jewish fisherman, right? You go into the synoptics. You go into Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and whenever they're talking about fish, they call it ichthys. Pretty much the standard Greek word for fish, ichthys. In Luke, I believe it's Luke 24:43, talking about how the risen Jesus is eating a honeycomb and a broiled fish, calls a prepared fish optus ichthys. Optus ichthys. That's what Luke calls a prepared cooked fish. We go to John's Gospel, and what do you see? In John 6, where he's talking about the miraculous feeding of the 5,000, And in John 21, when he's talking about eating a meal of fish on the shore with the risen Jesus, it's not ichthys that he refers to it as. He refers to it as opsarion. So what's the significance of that? Well, I'm going to see if I can bring the quote up here from a book written by an atheist. Bring it up. Opsarion cooked fish. Alright, this is by Jesus a Life by A.N. Wilson. A.N. Wilson is now a Christian. When he was writing this, he was an atheist. And he's talking about how some, people find evidence to believe what they believe. And he says, like the other three Gospels of the New Testament, the fourth Gospel presents us with a number of historical statements which appear to be verifiable by means of modern historical analysis. Depending on your own religious beliefs or upon the extent of our desire to extract historical details from such stories as the Gospel, we can decide whether these details are authentic or not. The fourth Gospel's account of the feeding of the 5,000, for example, we find the fish eaten at the miraculous meal is not ichthys, the normal Greek word for fish, used by other evangelists, but opsarion. This is a diminutive of the word opson, which means cook food. Opsarion probably meant pickled fish. It's kind of like the word kipper or bloater, that is to say, fish that had been prepared for customers by a tradesman. It is not a word which Matthew, Mark, and Luke use, remote as they were from the fish trade and the events that relate in their Gospels. The use of such a trade term as opsarion suggests the author might well have been drawing on traditions which go back to an actual fisherman, actual trade. For John A.T. Robinson, the opsarion is an authentication of the Gospel of the Nazarenes. It helps Robinson believe that the author of the fourth Gospel was actually John the fisherman and a friend and disciple of Jesus Christ. So, opsarion is a trade term used by fishermen to describe broiled, prepared fish. If a Jewish fisherman wrote it, you'd expect to see that kind of stuff in the Gospel. And you do. You see Aramaic words translated directly into Greek as well in his Gospel. You see him describe the pool of Bethesda, where Jesus performed a miracle in John chapter 5. And until maybe a century or so ago, they didn't think the pool actually existed. They dug it up. And that kind of indicates that this guy was a Jewish dude, a Jewish fisherman with his boots on the ground in Israel. And that's kind of the description of St. John. So, yeah, I don't know. I found that interesting. I hope you do too. I kind of come from a background that, I was pretty well propagandized in college by a liberal professor that, that Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John didn't really write the Gospels, etc., etc. And it's interesting in my later life that I'm finding, there is evidence to show that these guys did. And I'll tell you what else. The reasons why the people give that they didn't, they're kind of childish. But anyway, yeah. Anyhow, yeah, that's, if anybody could kind of link these two things together, phony phone calls and gospel criticism, or textual criticism of the Gospels, it's me. If you're at all interested in hearing any stories of my crank calling days, drop a line in the comments section. You won't have to twist my arm for me to do a few videos about those either. Talk to you.